What is up guys, TSL here back with a brand new video. In today's video I will be covering if statements in Roblox. Now I know at the end of last video I told you we'll probably be covering connections in the next video, but I totally forgot that we did not do if statements yet. So if statements, I'm going to be teaching you a couple of things, a couple of different ways you can structure them, and just some of my favorite ways to do them. Now basically an if statement is just a way to check a condition. If a condition is true, execute code. If it's false, you can execute a different set of code. Or if it's false, but you want to check something else if it's false, you can execute that as well. So there's three different structures to the if statement. First you have the if statement itself. Then you have an else if statement. That's if the original if statement is false, then it will move on to the next else if statement. And this will check if that statement is true. If it is, it will run the code, or if not, it will either do nothing, or if you have a specified else statement, it will run that. So let me give you an example and show you how to set this up. So I'm going to just insert a script in server script service, our favorite service. And basically, all we're going to do right now is type in the if keyword. This is how you start an if statement. And then you want to put your condition. So let's make some variables up here. Make sure you check out the previous videos in the series if you haven't already. So let's put local A is equal to 2, local B is equal to 5, and local C is equal to, we'll do A times 2 plus 0.5. And then here, we'll make an if statement. So let's check if A is greater than B, then we want to print out A is greater than B. And we can also do some concatenation. So we could do A and then put the value of A is greater than B and the value of B. And we'll put some parentheses as well. So like that. And now this right now it won't work because, well, A 2 is not greater than B 5. So let's say we want an else statement. Then we can just grab this, print this, and we can change this. So now which one do you think will run? Yep, if you said else, you are correct because, well, A is not greater than B, so this will run instead. So this checks the condition. This if statement checks the condition A and B, or A greater than B. If it is, it'll execute this code. If it's not, then it'll execute the code in the else statement. Now one important thing to know as well is you don't have if A is greater than B, then your code, and then an end, and then your else statement with another end. You don't have an end until the whole end of every statement, like else if and else statements. So you can also have nested if statements. So we can say if B is greater than A, that's what this else statement is checking. Or if, yeah, that's basically what it's checking. Then we can say if B is greater than C, then print B is the highest number. And then we'll do else, and we can print C is the biggest number. And now what we should get in the output is B is the highest number and A, 2, in parentheses, is less than B, and then in parentheses 5. So if we go ahead and run this, you'll see that's exactly what we get. B is the highest number and A, 2, is less than B, 5. But now let's say we make C equal to A times 3 plus 0.5. Now we should get a C is the biggest number, and we still get this because that's outside of our if statement. But if we move this up into here as well, then we will only get C is the biggest number in the output. Alright, another thing we can do is, instead of doing this, we can basically make this same thing happen, but we can grab this and just move this back here, and we can just cut this for now, And then up here, we'll add in a else if statement. Now, we want this else if statement to run if C is greater than B. If it is, then we want to print C is the biggest number. But wait, what if we changed A to be greater than B? Well, this won't run because it succeeds the first if statement as well. But if we do like if A, or yeah. Also, one thing let's just run this first. You'll see we get C is the biggest number, and that's it. But if we change this back to A times 2, then we'll get these two prints here. As you see, that's what happened. And then even if we leave C as the biggest number, if we change A to 6, then instead of getting C as the biggest number, we get this, because scripts execute in order. So if this is true, then none of this will run, even if this is also true. But if this is false, then it will look through all of these statements and execute the one that is true. Alright, so another thing to note is all of these comparisons, like A is greater than B, this returns a Boolean of either true or false. So this, since A right now is greater than B, let's just comment that. Since A right now is greater than B, this is saying the same thing as if true, then, and then this is saying else if, and the else is always saying else if false. That's basically all else does. So if true, it'll print that, and if it's false, then it'll print that. So this won't print, but this will. Let's go back to this. Now the next thing I want to talk about is how we can have chain operators. Now this is another thing I see a lot on the dev forum happening, and people are getting confused because they think they can do if A is greater than B or C, like something like that. Like if A is greater than B or C, they expect this to work, but no, you have to rewrite the whole statement. So if A is greater than B, or B is greater than C, or in that case, the original case, it would be A is greater than C, which can't happen because it's A times a number. But anyways, this is how you'd have to write in a statement like that with or. And the same thing goes with and. You have to retype the whole statement. So basically, and or are very self-explanatory. This is checking if A is greater than B and it's greater than C. If it is, then we could print A is the highest number, or the biggest number. And let's just make C like 10 right now. So everything is just a different number. So if A is greater than B and A is greater than C, then print A is the biggest number. But if C is greater than A and C is greater than B, then C is the biggest number, and otherwise B is the biggest number. So let's try this. Right now we get C is the biggest number because 10 is bigger than 5 and it's bigger than 6. But now if we change A to 16, for example, now we get A is the biggest number. But if we change this to like -12 and and C to 2, now we'll get B is the biggest number. Alright, so yeah, that's basically all there is to if statements. Now let me show you one of my favorite things to do with if statements. Now a lot of times, like in your code, especially when you're dealing with, like, let's say touch events or something, you're trying to get the player from a touch event, you want to, and not only for that, but just anytime you just want to check if something exists in like a function or something, a lot of times you'll just do if, let's say, C, then this will check if C exists. So here, let's give another example. You see in the workspace we have a base plate. We'll just do local base plate is equal to game.workspace : find first child base plate. So now we'll say if base plate, then, and let's actually put this in a function so I can show you everything. Say local function color base plate, and we'll take in a color. We'll say if base plate, then we'll do base plate dot color is equal to color. Right, so yeah, this works. It's perfectly fine, nothing's wrong with it, because if I do color base plate, and if I pass in color 3 dot from RGB, and let's just do the color wheel, let's give it green for some reason. Anyways, this will work, nothing's wrong with it. Even if I make the base plate like game.workspace.baseplate 2, even though there is no base plate 2, if we go in the output, you see we don't get any errors for it. But if we remove this, both of these, now you'll see we should be getting an error, and you see we do attempt to index nil with color because it actually doesn't find this. Also, if you just did .baseplate2 here, it will automatically throw an error. As you see, baseplate2 is not a valid member of workspace. That's why if you're checking for something, always use find first child. So let's go back to baseplate2 real quick. So right, we're getting an error, but if we add these two lines back, well, we're not going to be getting an error anymore. Nothing's just going to happen. So the rest of our script will still run and it won't just break. But let's say you have to check a lot of things, and you're like, if I'm just going to put random things, right? But you'll actually have uses for this, like so you see it could get a bit messy with all these ends at the end. So what I like to do instead is, as we learned about in the last video with functions, using return cancels out of the function. And also you could return something, but if you return nothing, it will just cancel the function and nothing else will happen. So basically, as you see, all of this is underlined now because this code will actually never run because we have this return up here. So with that knowledge, what we can do is make something called a guard clause. Now what a guard clause is you take this statement, or any statement that you want to check for something, and you invert it. So the opposite of if baseplate is if not baseplate, or if baseplate is equal to nil. If not baseplate and if baseplate is equal to nil are the same things. Also, that was the last thing I wanted to talk about with if statements as well, is the not operator will just check if it's the opposite. So if not true, or like if you're using a boolean and let's say you have a is greater than b from the example before, if you do not a is greater than b, that will be if a is less than b. So it basically just inverts it. Alright, so that's what we want to do here. We want to invert our if statement to make a guard clause. So we'll say if not baseplate, then we just want to return and end that if statement. So if we don't find the baseplate, or if this baseplate is equal to null, which it is because it's baseplate 2 and that doesn't exist, then our function will just end. And as you'll see, this won't lead to a whole bunch of nested if statements like this, because if we did the same things from before, like if not 21, then return end, and if not 12, then return end. Well, and we did this and we set the color here, you see there's no more nested if statements and it just looks a lot cleaner. So if we test this, we won't be getting an error anymore. See no error from our script. And if we change this to just baseplate, then, well, as you see, no errors, and we get a very hurtful to the eyes color baseplate. Anyways, and if we comment this out and we put back the less clean way of all the nested if statements with a whole bunch of ends at the end, see it does the same thing, but I just personally like guard clauses better to avoid a whole bunch of nesting. Now guys, that is it when it really comes to if statements. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps me out and motivates me a ton. Also, make sure you turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on the next video, which reminds me to tell you guys that the next video for this series will be coming out tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, so see you then. Peace.